بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم. الحمد لله رب العالمين. اللهم صل وسلم وبارك على المبعوث رحمة للعالمين سيدنا ومولانا وحبيبنا وقرة أعيننا قائد الغر المحجلين وشفيع المذنبين وسيد ولد آدم ولا فخر محمد بن عبد الله الهاشمي القرشي وعلى آله وأصحابه ومن والاه. ثم أما بعد. So alhamdulillah, we are resuming our sessions entitled The Journey is the Destination, the Way or the Path of the Arifin, primarily taking from the work of Imam al-Laja'i entitled Qutb al-Arifin, or the guiding pole of the knowers of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. And so thus far we've completed the first third of the book, and we also had two addendums not included in the book. So we looked at an-nubuwat, prophetology, and we also looked at as-sam'iyat, or eschatology, looking at the ahwal al-akhirah, the events and occurrences of the akhirah, of the next life, and we did it kind of in a very summarized way. So we did pretty much a kind of summary of Islamic aqidah or theology. And now we're about to embark on the second third of the book, which we said is about spiritual refinement, في التهذيب والرياضة, so spiritual refinement and discipline. And though we may have I think mentioned this early on, one might ask, well, what's the relationship between these two things? What does creed and holding things to be true and affirming the nature of reality, nature of the universe, and ultimately of the existence of Allah, what does it have to do with spiritual discipline and spiritual refinement? And our scholars have taught us, the ulama, that there are kind of three main epistemological routes to discerning truth and reality. And epistemological is a fancy way of saying how we know what we know. So how we know what we can know what we know by way of the pure intellect, what the ulama have called al-aql, and then they talk about al-hijaj al-aqliyya, about rational proofs and affirming things because they are not conceivable any other way, and we kind of talked a little bit about that. So we can't conceive 1 + 1 being anything other than 2. We can't conceive that the part can ever be greater than the whole. These are some of the principles of non-contradiction. So these two opposites can't be true at the same time. So 1 + 1 can't equal 2 and then also equal 3 at the same time. I can't be sitting here physically and taking up this space right here and then also taking up a physical space behind the camera. And our intellect tells us that we know that's impossible. So we know those things to be certain truths, and we can also arrive at the existence of God or Supreme Being, or at the very least the inability of all the things around us, what we sum up in the word the universe, to exist without God, without a Supreme Being who made them to exist. So the causer of all causes, so to speak, and we kind of went over that. That's one epistemic or epistemological route. Another one, as we mentioned also, is al-khabar as-sadiq, which is when we hear from an authoritative source that for us is beyond any doubt about its veracity. In other words, that the source where it's coming from is true. So this is how we know the veracity of the Quran and everything that is mentioned and contained and revealed in the Quran. We also believe its veracity. So if it says that there were prophets who lived before the Prophet Muhammad ﷺ, like Moses and Abraham and Jesus and Solomon and David and Elijah and others, then we believe it, because we know the Quran is an unassailable source, and we also know that to be true in a way by hijaj aqliya, also by way of rational proofs, that the Quran has remained as it was revealed for all this time, and the miraculous nature of the Quran, it could not have been authored by the Prophet ﷺ, and so hence there's no other conclusion except that it came from wahi, from revelation from Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. So both of those two routes are acceptable routes to Iman, right? Iman basically means at-tasdiq, right? To say this is true or this is not true. So they're acceptable. And for many people it's sufficient, it's enough, and we don't need to have for many to go beyond that. And some of the akhbar praise the deen al-ajayiz, or the deen or the practice of the older women. In other words, people from the awam, people from the general populace of Muslims whose iman is ironclad and is unassailable because they arrived at it from one of those two other routes. And they need not delve into very intricate and sophisticated arguments for the existence of God, as you may find in some of the rational kalam theology that is part of our turath, is part of our tradition. Now the third route, which is really the crux of what we're trying to do with these sessions and this particular book, is the what they call the dhawqi or the shuhudi route to Iman. And dhawqi means something that you taste, obviously, from the Arabic, and shuhudi means something that you bear witness to, that you can actually see. So it is a type of dururi path to Iman, and dururi means something that you find completely necessary within your heart, and you cannot conceive of another way. You can't conceive of another paradigm or another way of looking at things. And these are meanings that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala can create within our heart. And I think when we talked about prophetology, and we talked about one of the routes to affirming the prophethood of Muhammad sallallahu alaihi wasallam, which was the route of Abu Bakr as-Siddiq and as-Siddiqeen, which is a dhawqi shuhudi route, is a meaning that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala creates within the servant of God that gives you this, I know it to be true, I can taste the truth of it, I can see the truth of it. And we say that this is from Allah to us. So Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala can give us these meanings, He can create these meanings in our hearts. But is there a way to avail ourselves of these meanings? So clearly it's from Allah to us, and we don't necessarily have the power within ourselves to create the meanings within ourselves. Allah creates the meanings as He's khaliq kulli shay. He creates everything. But can we avail ourselves, right? Can we put ourselves in a let's say a prime position by which to present ourselves before Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, and maybe by His mercy He will create those meanings in our heart? That's really the crux of the whole dhawqi route or shuhudi route to Iman. So then the question becomes, how does one actually avail themselves of this? And this is going to be based upon, as the title suggests of the second third of the book, a spiritual course of discipline, spiritual refinement, right? And basically it is practicing the sunnah of Muhammad sallallahu alaihi wasallam, I mean in a nutshell, and avoiding what that entails of avoiding the prohibitions and doing the commands, and ma dhahara minha wa ma batan, that which is outwardly practiced and that which is inwardly practiced. And so the practice or the sunnah of Muhammad sallallahu alaihi wasallam, his practice, yes, it includes the words and the deeds as we mentioned, but also the internal states, the ahwal of Muhammad sallallahu alaihi wasallam. And so this really is the kind of the main essential of the science or the spiritual discipline that we call tasawwuf, or called tazkiyat al-nafs, or called al-ihsan. Many different names, but the musamma wahid, right, which is the essential nature of it is one, which is to avail ourselves of having this tahqiqi, kashfi, dhawqi, shuhudi, similar terms, presence of God in our lives. So kashfi means that Allah unveils Himself to us, reveals Himself to us in a way that is not just mere intellectual acknowledgement, but something, I would say, deeper and more profound than just to affirm a list of things that are true and are not true, which we can get from the Quran, we should get from the Hadith, but then actually having this immediate sort of, in every breath that I am taking, in every movement, in every stillness, there's an awareness of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. This is what we call the dhawqi or the shuhudi. And what it requires to avail ourselves of this as we said, is this tahdhib wal riyada. So it needs a spiritual program or a spiritual discipline. So that's what we're going to begin to read. Those of you who have the book, and I know some of you who were able to get it, alhamdulillah, I believe Al Jarir bookstore, those who live in the United States, in Los Angeles, has copies of the book, if I'm not mistaken. And if you live anywhere in the Muslim world, Cairo, Lebanon, Beirut, certainly I think they have it too, and probably you could find it with some difficulty maybe in the Arab Gulf. So Al-Qutb Al-Thani, so the second guiding pole, في التهذيب والرياضة, spiritual discipline and spiritual refinement. قال المصنف رحمه الله ونفعنا بهم في الدارين آمين ورضي الله عنا وعنكم. فصل من عرف مولاه تهيأ للقائه. So we translate this topic, I think. من عرف مولاه, whoever knows their master or their lord, singular, تهيأ للقائه. Right? Then they prepare for meeting him, meeting Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. He says, أعلم رحمك الله أن من عرف مولاه تهيأ للقائه. Whoever knows his Lord will prepare oneself for the liqa, for the meeting. فإن من عرف تنزيه مولاه على حسب ما ذكرناه ولم ينزه نفسه عن معاصي الله تعالى ولم يؤثر الآخرة عن الدنيا فنسبته إلى العارفين باطل وليس الانكباب على قذرات الدنيا من صفة العارفين. So here's the connection. He says whoever makes tanzih, or knows the tanzih, knows what is necessary for God in terms of attributes, as we talked about, and what is possible and what is impossible, does all of that tanzih, and knows what's appropriate for Allah and what's not appropriate in terms of the attributes and how we speak about them. على حسب ما ذكرناه, that which he's explained earlier. ولكن ولم ينزه نفسه عن معاصي الله تعالى, but then you do not make that which is inappropriate for yourself. So what Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala has declared to be inappropriate for you in terms of his prohibitions. ولم يؤثر الآخرة على الدنيا, and at the same time you do not prefer the akhirah over the dunya, knowing what you know about Allah. فنسبته إلى العارفين باطل. Then his affiliation with what we call here al-arifin, the knowers of God, is invalid. It's باطل. وليس الانكباب على قذرات الدنيا من صفة العارفين. Right? Al-inkibab, yani to throw oneself literally to the qadurat, to the impure and filthy things of the dunya, of the lower life. This is not min sifat al-arifin. It is not from the attributes of the arifin. إنما العارف من عرف مولاه ونزه عما لا يليق به. So the arif is the one who knows his master, knows Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, ونزهه, and declares inappropriate, عما لا يليق به, that which is inappropriate for him. وانكسر قلبه بالهيبة والتعظيم والإجلال. Right? And their heart is broken in terms of reverence, right? Hayba, ta'zim, and aggrandizing Allah, wal-ijlal, and declaring him to be magnificent. Difficult words to translate English, but they each have kind of a subtle shade of meaning not found in the other, between hayba and ta'zim and ijlal, but they're similar meanings. وَاسْتَحْيَا مِنَ اللَّهِ تَعَالَى أَنْ يَرَاهُ حَيْثُ نَهَا. So here's where the emotional component also comes in. تَسْتَحْيِ مِنَ اللَّهِ أَنْ يَرَاكَ حَيْثُ نَهَاكَ. That you feel shy and embarrassed that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala to see you where he has prohibited you. Right? وَاللَّهُ مَعَكُمْ أَيْنَمَا كُنْتُمْ. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala is with you wherever you may be. So you feel shy and embarrassed that you should be seen somewhere, and that somewhere is anywhere, even if you are in buruj and mushayyada, as the Quran mentions. If you're in the highest fortified towers, Allah can still see you there. فهذا طرف من صفة العارفين. Right? This is just kind of a side of the attributes of the arifin. It's not everything about them, but that's kind of a very basic thing. وأما من ينزه مولاه عن صفات الحدوث ونفى عنه كل ما لا يليق به ويقتحم مع ذلك ما نهاه الله عز وجل عنه فإليه إشارة بقوله تعالى أفرأيت من اتخذ إلهه هواه وأضله الله على علم وختم على سمعه وليس عبادة الهوى من صفة العارفين. As for the one, right, who knows that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala is who he is, نزهه ويقول لا إله إلا الله محمد رسول الله, and this is firm within you. But مع ذلك, at the same time, يقتحم, right, jumps into and is not cautious about that which Allah has prohibited from him, then he is like the one mentioned in this verse, indicated in this verse, أَفَرَأَيْتَ مَنِ اتَّخِذَ إِلَهَهُ هَوَى. Have you seen the one who has taken his caprice as his Lord? وَأَضَلَّهُ اللَّهُ عَلَى عِلْمٍ وَخَطَمَ عَلَى سَمْعِهِ. And then Allah has found him to be mudil, right, in a state of dalal, in a state of misguidance. وَخَطَمَ عَلَى سَمْعِهِ. And then he doesn't hear, right? He doesn't hear the idha. He doesn't hear the admonitions. وَلَيْسَ عِبَادَةُ الْهَوَى مِنْ صِفَةِ الْعَارِفِينَ. And so worshipping your own caprice is not from the attributes of the Arifin. And you might say, well, how does one worship their own whim and their caprice? مَا أَكْثَرَهُ الْيَوْمِ. Right? How many people are actually doing that? All over the place. So if you prefer that which you want and that which you desire, and at the same time it is in direct contradiction to what Allah commands of you and desires of you, but nevertheless you choose that which you desire and that which you want, then you are following your hawa, right? Then you are following your caprice. And then at the same time, it's like you are taking that as your Lord rather than Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, because the Lord is the one who told you, don't go left, go right, but nevertheless you go left. So that means you have put more reliance and stock into that which is your caprice, which is your whim. That's why this whole spiritual refinement part is very important, because the reason that you do that, or that we do that, is because it's so much easier and enticing and indulging just to follow that which your hawa wants, that what your nafs desires, what your caprice wants. And it takes mujahada, it takes struggle and sacrifice to follow what Allah wants. That's the whole idea of this dunya. الَّذِي خَلَقَ الْمَوْتَ وَالْحَيَاةَ لِيَبْلُوَكُمْ, right? لِيَبْلُوَكُمْ بَلَاء. It's a test. وَنَبْلُوكُمْ بِالْخَيْرِ وَالشَّرِّ فِتْنَةً. And we will test you with good, with al-khayr, and with al-shar, fitnatan, as a tribulation for you. This is a dar bala, dar ibtila. This whole place, Allah designed it to be a tribulation. So to expect anything besides that, and then think that we can just follow our caprice and everything will turn out okay, it's folly, right? It's not truly knowing Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. It's not truly knowing yourself. ولا تقولن الهوى لا يعبد وقد قال الله تعالى أفرأيت من اتخذ إله هوى الآية. And don't say the hawa, don't say caprice is not something to be worshipped. Allah said it in the Quran. So it doesn't sound very intuitive that I'm not going to worship myself or worship what I desire, but your actions betray that. Your actions belie that. You are, in essence, doing that when you follow all of your desires and you don't have any sort of foot on the brake and say, I don't want to do that, I want to do this. وقال عليه السلام عن محمد صلى الله عليه وسلم الهوى أبغض إله عبد, that the hawa, the caprice, is the most hateful or reprehensible Lord or God to be worshipped. فإن الهوى حجاب للعقول فإذا حجبت العقول فلا سبيل إلى المعرفة لأن المعرفة نتيجة من نتائج العقل. So the hawa, the caprice, the whim of the lower soul, it's a veil over the intellect. And if the intellects are veiled, then there is no way towards ma'rifah. Then there's no way towards this spiritual, dhawqi knowledge of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. لأن المعرفة, because معرفة نتيجة من نتائج العقل, right? It is from the results of the workings or the mujahadat and the struggles of The intellect will produce that for you. But if your intellect is covered by your caprice, by your hawa, then how is intellect going to arrive at that conclusion? وَالْبَصِيرَةُ نَتِيجَةٌ مِنْ نَتَائِجِ الْمَعْرِفَةِ. And then the basira, which is the spiritual insight, right, which is to see things as they are. نَتِيجَةٌ مِنْ نَتَائِجِ الْمَعْرِفَةِ. It is a result or a thamara, a fruit of the fruits of, from amongst the fruits of ma'rifah, of knowing Allah in this dhawqi sense. وَمَنْبَعُ الْعِلْمِ مِنَ الْعَقْلِ. Right, and knowledge comes from the intellect. And here I think he's using intellect in his particular convention in a kind of broader way than, let's say, Al-Ghazali. So he's kind of meaning the intellect, aql, that also includes to some degree ar-ruh, right, spiritual cognition. So not just intellectual cognition, but also spiritual cognition as being part of that understanding, of his understanding of aql. فإن نسبة العلم إلى العقل كنسبة نور الشمس إلى الشمس. So the parable or the metaphor of knowledge to the intellect is like the sunlight to the sun. So knowledge then emanates from the aql, from the intellect, just like the sunlight emanates from the sun. ومستقر العقل في الرأس. Right? ومستقر العقل في الرأس. And he's physically, he says, the aql, the intellect, is in the head. أعني بالرأس القلب. And then he clarifies, as what we just said earlier. And what I mean by الرأس القلب, what I mean by that is the heart. وهو قول أبي جعفر الفرجي رحمه الله لأن العقل رأس الجوارح وأميرها، وهو معنى قول عبد الله بن مسعود رضي الله عنه قال العقول معادن الرأس، والعلم دلالة على أعمال الطاعة، والمعرفة دلالة على أفات الأعمال، والبصائر دلالة على اختبار عواقب الأمور واختبار مواردها وتصريف مصارفها. So he takes the opinion, and I'll explain that there are other opinions, that the connection, it's not actually a physical location, but the connection between the head and the aql and the qalb is one that is more centrally connected to the physical part of the body that we call the head. And he says هذا قول أبي جعفر الفرجي. I don't know who that is, but it's someone, I think, of his contemporaries or came earlier, who said that لأن العقل رأس الجوارح وأميرها, because the head, where the brain is and where the mind is, it is the head of the limbs, right, and has control over them. And he says this is the meaning of what Ibn Mas'ud said رضي الله عنه العقول معادن الرأس, that the intellect is from the minds of the brain or the head. والعلم دلالة على أعمال الطاعة, and knowledge is an indicator or is an evidence that there is acts of obedience. والمعرفة دلالة على أفات الأعمال, or we should say knowledge will indicate and show you what acts of obedience are. والمعرفة دلالة على أفات الأعمال, and ma'rifah, which is the spiritual cognition, which is a deeper, more profound than just intellectual knowledge, but spiritual knowledge. دلالة will guide you, or is a guide to أفات الأعمال, to the shortcomings of our a'mal, right? Lack of sincerity, lack of sidq, right, of utmost sincerity. These are things that ma'rifah will lead you to. والبصائر دلالة على اختبار عواقب الأمور واختبار مواردها وتصريف مصارفها. Then the basair, right, which is, he said, is نتيجة العلم, or نتيجة المعرفة, which is the fruit of ma'rifah, the basair. So spiritual insight then will lead you or guide you to اختبار عواقب الأمور, to know the consequences of things, واختبار مواردها, and know where they come from, وتصريف مصارفها, and how they should be spent and how they should be channeled and so forth. So I said there's other opinions, some of them, and I think Al-Ghazali espoused this opinion, Abu Hamid Al-Ghazali radiallahu anhu, that the intellect is the qalb, and the qalb is connected. There's a relationship between the qalb and the physical heart, and they say al-qalb al-samburi, that has valves and veins and so forth, and the spiritual heart. So in either case, whether they're talking about aql or they're talking about qalb, or whether they're the same thing or they're two different things, shades of meaning, basically what we're talking about is the essence of the human being. And the essence of the human being is not the physical form, right? And it's not what Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala is looking at, right? محل نظر الله القلب. What Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala is looking at in terms of sincerity and in terms of your true dedication of who you really are is your heart. It's not the outward form. إن الله لا ينظر إلى صوركم ولا أجسادكم ولكن ينظر إلى قلوبكم وأعمالكم. Hadith al-Nabi sallallahu alaihi wasallam. Allah doesn't look to your outer forms and your bodies, but He looks to your hearts and to your deeds. These are the things that make you who you are, not your outer form. Though there is a connection somehow with the outer form and the inner essence. How that connection is exactly, when they asked about ruh, when they asked about the spirit, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala told the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam to tell them, قُلْ رُوحٌ مِنْ أَمْرِ رَبِّي وَمَا أُوتِيتُ مِنَ الْعِلْمِ إِلَّا قَلِيلًا. Say the spirit is from a matter of my Lord, and you have not been given except a little bit of knowledge. So ultimately, the answer to that question is we don't know. But we do know that there is a relationship somehow. Wallahu a'lam. So we'll continue. So that was one section. So we'll go on to the next section in that particular second set of chapters. فصل الدنيا بحر عميق والآخرة من وراء ذلك البحر. So he says the dunya is a deep or vast ocean, والآخرة من وراء ذلك البحر, and the akhirah is something that is beyond this particular ocean of the dunya. وَاعْلَمْ أَنَّ الدُّنْيَا مِحْنَةٌ وَاخْتِبَارٌ لِلْخَلَائِقِ. And this is what we said earlier. The dunya, here he's talking about dunya in terms of the actual metaphysical cosmological space we're occupying here, which is all of this dunya. Dunya can have other meanings, right? Dunya could be the hayat dunya, which is the the competition and the vying with one another and the upsmanship and all of that. The vile things of the dunya, that can also mean dunya. But he's talking about dunya in terms of this whole place. وَعَلَمَ أَنَّ الدُّنْيَا مِحْنَةٌ وَاخْتِبَارٌ لِلْخَلَائِقِ. Know that the dunya is a mihna, it's a test and tribulation, واختبار. So it's a tribulation and it is a test للخلائق, for all created things. فإن الدنيا بحر عميق والآخرة من وراء ذلك البحر لا ينكشف الحجاب عن قلب عبد إلى النظر إلى الآخرة إلا من بعد جواز ذلك البحر العميق في سفن الصبر والرضا لأنه بحر لجي يغشاه موج من فوقه موج من فوقه سحاب ظلمات بعضها فوق بعض. So he's speaking a little bit metaphorically here. And he said, if we think of the dunya as a bahrun amiq, as a deep ocean, and the akhirah is beyond that deep ocean, then the veil that is on the qalb, the veil that is on the heart of the servant of Allah, so that one may see the akhirah, right? رؤية يعني البصيرة, to see the akhirah with your spiritual insight, like the hadith of Haritha, right? When the Prophet ﷺ, and he said to Haritha, Ya Haritha, كيف أصبحت? And Haritha radiallahu anhu said, Ya Rasulullah, أصبحت مؤمنا حقا. He said, Ya Rasulullah, I have woken up as a true believer. And then the Prophet ﷺ says to him, لكل حق حقيقة فما حقيقة إيمانك. For every reality, or for every truth, there is a reality. So what is the reality of your truth? That you are a true believer. And then he said, عزفت عن نفسي الدنيا وصمت نهاري وأظمأت نهاري وقمت ليلي وكأني أرى إلى أهل الجنة في الجنة يتزاورون وأن كأني أرى إلى أهل النار يعذبون, or something to this effect. He said, I have made my day hungry and thirsty and fasting, and I have ashartu layli, and I've stayed up at night praying, and it's as if I see the people of paradise visiting one another, and it's if I see the people in hellfire being tortured and tormented. And then the Prophet ﷺ praised him. He said, فَعَرَفْتَ فَلْزَمْ. He said, now you know, so stick to this. So he's describing his basira, like he's describing his daruri knowledge of the Jannah and of the Nar and of Ahwal al-Akhirah. He sees it like it's right in front of him. And Sayyidina Ali said something similar. He said, لو كشف الحجاب ما ازددت يقينا. Right? He said if the veil was lifted, in other words, I would see the things of the akhirah with my eyes, ما ازددت يقينا. I would not be any more certain because I already see it with my heart. Right? I already see it with the eye of my heart. I don't need to see it with the physical eyes. So this dunya then is a type of veil, a veil over the heart. So the akhirah and Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala are not veiled from us. We're the ones who have these more or less self-imposed veil upon ourselves. So he says لا ينكشف الحجاب عن قلب عبد إلى النظر إلى الآخرة إلا من بعد جواز ذلك البحر العميق. So you're not going to be able to, for these things to be unveiled to you and see them in a more profound way, in a more necessary way, a more, let's say, a more immediate way, except if you get beyond the veil of the dunya. And he said, and you do this in the ship of patience and contentment, right? الرضا هنا contentment with Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. لأنه بحر, because the dunya is a bahr. And then he استشهد بالآية, and he uses the verse from Surah An-Nur, لُجِّيٌّ يَغْشَاهُ مَوْجٌ, right? Very dark, one wave on top of another, and then on top of that other wave is a sahab, is a dark cloud. ظُلُمَاتٌ بَعْضُهَا فَوْقَ بَعْضٍ. So darkness is one over the other. So the hujub, right? The veils then are these darknesses that can be attributed to our own actions, to our own deeds, and to our own internal states. So ride the safina, ride the ship of sabr, of forbearance and of patience, and then ultimately of rida, of contentment with Allah and His decree, and then tatajawaz, then you will traverse these dhulumat, these darknesses. وهذه صفات ضرب بها المثال للدنيا لأن صفاتها وصفات المغترين بها مثل ذلك الموج الأول، موج الشهوات الداعية إلى صفات البهيمة، وذلك اشتغال العبد بشهوة بطنه وفرجه وتخبط قلبه في بحور التفكر في ذلك. فمن اتصف بهذه الصفات فقد اتصف بصفات البهيمة، لأن البهيمة ليس لها عمل إلا الاشتغال ببطنها وفرجها، لكن البهيمة لا لوم عليها لأن اشتغالها ببطنها يكثر شحمها وثمنها، وباشتغالها بفرجها يكثر نسلها وتنمو لأربابها، ولذلك خلقت. So he said, as we said earlier, this is a metaphor, sifat, that we are striking a metaphor for the dunya. Why? Because the metaphor of the dark waves and the dark clouds that you have traversed through, it's very similar to al-mughtarrin, right? To those who are deluded by the delights and the enticements of this world that we live in, of the dunya. And he said this is like the first mawj, right? Like the first big wave that we have to get through. Mawj al-shahawat, the wave of physical desire. الداعية إلى صفات البهيمة, very much similar to the physical desires of any animal, any beast of burden. So when they say bahima, usually they're talking about cows and goats and camels. This is what they have in mind in general. And he said, what does this bahima, this animal, have? Well, it's busy thinking about the two shahwas, the two desires, that of its stomach and that of its private parts, its sexual parts. وتخبط قلبه في بحور تفكر في ذلك. Right? And then not just that, but then the heart becomes busy thinking about how am I going to get those two things. That's a big veil. فمن اتصف بهذه الصفات فقد اتصف بصفات البهيمة. So whoever has these two attributes and is busy thinking about it, that's what they spend their day and night doing, then they have more or less the attributes of these beasts of burden. Because this animal doesn't have anything to do except to eat, to feed itself, and to procreate. But there's no blame on the animal for doing this, because its busyness with feeding itself will make it a larger animal and a meatier animal, right? If we're talking about a cow or a goat. And with its busyness with procreating, then it will have much progeny, which will also make it more valuable for its owners. وَلِذَلِكَ خُلِقَتْ. But there's no blame on it, because that's why it was created. All of these animals, the animals that we eat and that we raise, animal husbandry, all of those animals are there for our benefit, for us to live and for us to live upon. And they're doing exactly what they're supposed to do. So There is no blame on the cow for grazing all day and then procreating and making little cows. That's what exactly we're supposed to do. لذلك خلقت. It was created for this. فمن كانت همته في بطنه وفرجه كان كالبهيمة بل رتبته أسفل من رتبة البهيمة لأن البهيمة ليس لها عقل تعرف به خساسة حالها أما العبد فقد جانس البهيمة في صفة فعلها بعد إفادة العقل الذي هو ميزان الله تعالى في أرضه. So someone who's like that is like the behemoth, it's like the beast of burden, and their degree, their rank is lower than actually. أولئك كالأنعام بل هم أضل, as the Quran says. They are like the an'am, rather they are adal, they are more misguided. Not that the behemoth is misguided, but you're of a lower rank because the behemoth, the beast of burden, doesn't have the intellect and the faculties that Allah has given you to know khasa'is haliha, right? Khasasat haliha, to know the weaknesses of its state and of its condition, of its spiritual state. Allah has given you those faculties. So if you're like the behemoth in this, and at the same time you have a aql, you have an intellect, and you have faculties by which to know, and this is the mizan Allah, this is the scale of God in the earth. وإلى هذا الصنف الإشارة بقول تعالى إنهم إلا كالأنعام بل هم أضل سبيلا. Another verse, similar meaning. They are nothing more than like the an'am, like the beast of burden, rather they are further astray. فهم أهل الموج الأول. So this group is part of that first mawj, that is from Surah An-Nur. لُجِّيٌ يَغْشَاهُ مَوْج, right? That first wave. مِن فَوْقِهِ مَوْج. Then there's another wave, right? So these people are from the ones who are busy with their shahawat, with their desires and physical desires. They're like the first wave. هو موج مظلم وأهله ملقبون بالحماقة. So doesn't mince his words. He said this is a very dark wave to be in, like a tidal wave. وأهله, and the people of it, they could be called or be attributed to al-hamaqa, which is, remissness, negligence, imbecility, whatever you want to call it. حماقة. وصنف ثان قادتهم الصفات المعمية إلى الغضب والعداوة. Then there's another group, right? Al-mu'miyya, so it blinds them, that are led by their anger and their enmity. والحقد والشحناء وحب الجاه والشرف, right? And hiqd, which is to feel an internal enmity for someone without actually doing something to them. والشحناء, again, kitman al-baghida, like you have this internal anger and you wish for bad things to happen to the people that you don't like. It's also part of hasad. وحب الجاه والشرف, and love of status and prestige and to be considered honorable by others. وحب المنزلة عند الناس, right? And to be lauded and to be praised and to put in high accolades by others. Then the thing is, when you don't get those things and you feel that you're entitled to them and you don't get them, then what drives you will be anger and enmity for the ones you feel that did not give it to you as they should have. That's the second wave. فهؤلاء أهل الموج الثاني, right? The second wave. وهو موج مظلم أشد سوادا من الموج الأول. Right? This is also a dark place to be, and it is darker than the first group. So the first group that's led by their physical desires, shahwat al-batan wal-farj, right, of the stomach and of the private sexual parts, they're not as bad as the ones who are led by enmity and anger and hiqd and shahna and all of these maladies of the heart. And incidentally, all of these books, they're kind of talking about the same thing but in different ways. If you read Ihya Ulumuddin of Abu Hamid al-Ghazali, he talks about kasr shahwatain, kitab kasr shahwatain, breaking the two desires. And the two desires are on the one side as-sifat al-bahimiyya, so those are like beasts of burden, and then the sifat as-sabu'iyya. So as-sabu' is any animal of prey. So that's how they compare the two. So cows, goats, and so forth, they're just physical desire, and then animals of prey like the wolf, like the lion, are the predatory animals. And that's how we become when we're led by our anger and our sense of entitlement and we don't get it. We're led by this predatory instinct within ourselves. Right. وفي كل شيء آية تدل على أنه الواحد. And everything there's a sign to show that He is the one. So maybe Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, part of his hikmah and His wisdom, He created lions and tigers and wolves to show us that we have those attributes within us, and at the same time we see sifat al-bahimiyya. Sometimes they say the pig also is included in those, even though we don't eat the pig, but with the camels and the goats is sifat al-shahwaniyya, right? Just pure physical desire. وهو موج مظلم أشد سوادا من الموج الأول, and this is darker than the second cloud. وهذا الصنف ملقب بالعمى والصمم. This group then is considered to be blind and deaf. Because think about it, when you're in a state of anger and you only see the object of your anger, you can't hear anybody else. You don't listen to them. You're in a completely different state. And it's very difficult to reason with someone who's in a state of anger like that. Now imagine if that anger is simmering within you, like consistently, and it drives you to do the things that you do. You won't listen. وصنف ثالث هم أهل السحاب المظلمة وهم أهل الاعتقادات الخبيثة لأن من صفات السحاب أن يحجب نور الشمس عن الأرض والاعتقادات الخبيثة تحجب نور العقل أن يفيد على القلوب وهذا الصنف هم أهل الظلمات بعضها فوق بعض. And then the third category, the third group, أهل السحاب المظلمة. So we also talked about the cloud in the verse. So the dark cloud, the first one, these are the people who have الاعتقادات الخبيثة, who have corrupt beliefs. Because from the attributes of this cloud is that it will block the sun's rays of light. So someone who has corrupt beliefs or bid'ah beliefs or thinks things about the prophets and Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala that are corrupt, then they block the rays of the sun, right? The rays of the truth. And these اعتقادات الخبيثة, for within themselves, these false and corrupt beliefs will veil the light of the intellect that it may then come from upon the heart. So the intellect is blocked, and then the heart then doesn't get the light of the ma'ani, the meanings that will first come to the intellect. وهذا الصنف هم أهل الظلمات بعضها فوق بعض. This group is the أهل الظلمات, as mentioned in the verse, بعضها فوق بعض. Darknesses one upon the other. وصنف رابع هم أهل سحاب مظلمة فوق أولئك حجبوا عن الإيمان والاستضاء بنور شمس القرآن العظيم ونور العقل فهذا الصنف إذا أخرج يده لم يكد يراها فإذا كانت المعرفة نورا من أنوار العقل وهي مواهب من مواهب الله تعالى ومنع الله عز وجل منها هذا الصنف فإليه الإشارة بسر قوله تعالى ومن لم يجعل الله له نورا فما له من نور. Then the fourth last one of these misguided groups, مظلمة فوق أولئك, this cloud, this darker cloud above all of the others, حجبوا عن الإيمان والاستضاء, so they don't even have iman, and they don't even have the basic nur ash-shams, right? So this cloud blocks out the sun completely, just like iman is blocked out completely. And the shams of the Quran, so the sun of the Quran, al-azim wa nur al-aql, so they don't get the meanings of the Quran, nor do they get to the light of the intellect. فهذا الصنف, as he mentioned in the Quran, إذا أخرج يده لم يكد يراها. So also from Surah An-Nur, if it comes after this verse, if they put their hand out, it's almost like they don't see it. So they are so blackened inside, they don't even see themselves. No self-awareness. فإذا كانت المعرفة نورا من أنوار العقل, so if this معرفة is light from amongst the lights of the intellect, وهي مواهب من مواهب الله تعالى, and it's from amongst the gifts of the divine gifts of God, ومنع الله عز وجل منها هذا الصنف, and this group has been denied that, فإليه الإشارة بسر قوله تعالى, then this is indicated in this verse of Allah, ومن لم يجعل الله له نورا فما له من نور. Same verse from Surah An-Nur, and whomsoever that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala has not made light for them, then there will be no light for them. So ultimately Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, He is the muhib, He is the one who gives, He is al-wahhab, He's the one who consistently give, and all we want to do is avail ourselves of these divine gifts of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. إنه ولي ذلك والقادر عليه والحمد لله رب العالمين. And we will stop here for this session. So if there are any questions, please feel free to type them in the chat box if you are so inclined. So, very good question from Chaplain Sundus. How do the Arifin incur sin? Do they sin at a lesser degree than the average person? And do they need to lead a life of near sinlessness to reach Ma'rifah? If that actually was the case, then no one would reach Ma'rifah. We are not ma'sumun. The only infallible, sinless people are the prophets and the messengers, as we mentioned in the previous session, or some previous sessions. And so we then the word that is described to people who can reach this stage of ma'rifah is hifz, mahfuzun, right? So al-hifz means to be preserved from sin. So it's not like they don't have the ability to sin; they may sin. And they also say hasanat al-abrar sayyi'at al-muqarrabin. So the hasanat of the abrar, so what is considered to be good deeds in terms of al-bar, a righteous person, for the arif or the muqarrab, may be considered a shortcoming. So we would praise people who work for the Jannah and avoid all sins and do their best, and they are looking forward to al-qusur wal-hur and all of these things that are promised in paradise. We say that's a good place to be, and that's driving them. But for the arif, we would say, nah, it's not. That's considered to be a shortcoming, because you made something other than Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala your objective, your hadaf. So la jannah wa la nar walakin al-mawla azza wa jal. So not working for paradise particularly, or to be afraid from fire, as the Rabi' al-Adawiyya mentioned some of her poems, but to seek Allah and Allah alone. And this is what they call it at tafreed, right? To see only Allah and nothing else but Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. So this is min sifat al-muqarrabin. So such people still can commit sin, they can make mistakes. And the Quran tells us that الَّذِينَ إِذَا مَسَّهُمْ طَائِفٌ مِّنَ الشَّيْطَانِ تَذَكَّرُوا فَإِذَا هُمْ مُبْصِرُونَ. The ones who they have been touched by something of the shaitan, تَذَكَّرُوا, right? So تَذَكَّرُوا means they remind themselves, they're reminded quickly. فَإِذَا هُمْ, right? They say this is إِذَا الْفُجَائِيَّة. So almost immediately, مُبْصِرُونَ. So even though they make a mistake, they realize their mistake. And they are not insistent upon continuing to make the mistake. And they don't have haughtiness and arrogance when they're reminded by others that maybe they made a mistake. These are sifat al-arifin. So it's not the idea that you don't make a mistake, but it's the idea that how do you contend with it when you make the mistake. This is where the ma'rifah comes in. Wallahu a'lam. Can Buddhists or non-Muslims have light as other religious claims to some ma'rifah? We would say that in our time, since the time of the Prophet Muhammad ﷺ, he is the Prophet for everyone, whether someone calls himself a Buddhist or a Christian or a Jew or whatever. They're all ummah of Muhammad ﷺ. And so we do not conceive that someone can have what we're specifically talking about here, ma'rifah, in really knowing Allah, unless you know his Prophet ﷺ. How can you deny Muhammad ﷺ and then somehow say that I know Allah, when he is the messenger, he is the conduit, he is the door, he is the sole channel by which you can know Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala if you deny Muhammad sallallahu alaihi wasallam. So that's not really conceivable. However, are there spiritual practices that other people of different faiths may do and practice that will get them to better sense of self-awareness, and perhaps even some semblance of spiritual awareness, and maybe even something that defies our experience, like a type of karama, though we wouldn't call it karama in that sense. So it's not a saintly miracle, but something based upon spiritual practice that they can perhaps get to that level is possible. The Hindu gurus who may be able to fast 40 days without eating anything and things like that, and they have developed a certain spiritual practice. We don't say those things are impossible, but our karama is al-istiqama, is being on the path of the Prophet Muhammad and the path to God. And so we wouldn't consider that istiqama. We would consider that they availed themselves of certain spiritual practices that maybe could lead them to having this type of spiritual experience, but not, I would say, an experience that's a tasting of the true nature of the divine. That, I think, can only happen if you affirm reality as it really is, and if you don't affirm Muhammad sallallahu alaihi wasallam, then you're not affirming reality. Wallahu ta'ala a'la wa a'lam. Walhamdulillahi rabbil alameen. So we will stop here.